A 23-year-old relapser named Jake reported drinking about a six-pack of beer every Friday and Saturday night during high school. He did it in order to feel like he was part of the group, to relax, and have fun. At that stage of his alcohol abuse, the beer did exactly what he wanted it to do.
That all changed when I left school and went to work as a salesman. I had to perform in a high-pressure environment and felt stressed. The other salesmen were competitive, and no matter what I did, they wouldn't let me into their circle. I began drinking bourbon every night to deal with the strain. I just wanted to feel more relaxed so I could cope better at work.
Jake consistently drank too much and woke up with terrible hangovers that caused new problems with his job. Even when he attended 12-step meetings, he felt like he didn't belong.
As the stress grew, I began to think, if this is sobriety, who needs it?
After going through the first relapse prevention planning step of stabilization, it was time for Jake to take the second step, assessment. By comparing his life history, his alcohol and drug use history, and his relapse history, Jake could see the recurrent problems that caused him to relapse.
The two major issues I experienced were 1, the need to drink to feel like I belonged, and 2, wanting to drink to cope with stress. During every past period of abstinence, I became lonely and depressed. The longer I stayed sober, the worse it got. The stress built up until I felt like I'd go crazy or collapse if I didn't take a drink to relax.
When Jake entered relapse prevention therapy, he felt demoralized and hopeless. That began to change when he heard his first lecture that described the typical warning signs that precede relapse. Relapse education is the third step of relapse prevention planning.
When I first started going to therapy, I thought I was crazy. Everything would be going fine, and suddenly, for no reason at all, I'd start overreacting to things. I'd get confused, make stupid mistakes, and then not know how to fix them. That drove me to drink. When the therapist started educating me on the warning signs, I felt like someone had read my mind. They understood the factors that caused me to get drunk, and I thought perhaps they know what I can do to stay sober.
Jake, like most relapsers, didn't know what his early relapse warning signs were before being educated, and as a result didn't recognize the problems until it was too late. A number of procedures are used to help recovering people recognize the early warning signs of relapse, which is step 4.
I really identified with the warning sign, tendency toward loneliness. One time I was sober and all alone in the house because my wife had left with the kids. I felt so lonely and abandoned. I couldn't understand why she would walk out just because we had a fight. I thought she should be able to handle it better than she was.
The 12-step group Jake was attending began asking questions, and it turned out that Jake had frequent arguments with his wife, caused by his job-related irritability. These family arguments were a critical warning sign that occurred before most relapses. Jake had never considered his marriage to be a problem, and as a result never thought of getting marriage counseling. Jake had now identified an additional warning sign, feeling like drinking to cope with marital problems. In order to be effectively managed, each of these warnings would need to be further clarified.
My therapist had me write down the irrational thoughts, unmanageable feelings, and self-defeating behavior that accompanied each of my warning signs to prepare for the next step of relapse prevention planning. For example, I wrote, I know I'm in trouble with my recovery when I'm feeling lonely and unable to fit in with others. When this happens, I tend to think I'm no good, and no one cares about me. I feel lonely, angry, and afraid. I have an urge to hide myself away so I don't have to talk with anyone.
With this detailed description of the relapse warning signs, Jake was ready to move on to the 5th step of relapse prevention planning, warning sign management. This is done by taking each relapse warning sign and developing a general coping strategy.
I wrote down my first warning sign. I know I'm in trouble with my recovery when I feel unable to cope with high levels of job-related stress. Then I wrote a general coping strategy for that sign. I will learn how to say no to extra projects, limit my work to 45 hours per week, and learn how to use relaxation exercises and meditation to unwind.
Can you share your coping strategy for the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors you mentioned earlier, Jake?
I identified my rational thought that I need to try harder in order to get things under control or else I'll be a failure. Then I wrote down the corresponding rational thought. I'm burned out because I'm trying too hard. I need time to rest, or I'll start making more mistakes. Next, I identified some unmanageable feelings I experienced, like humiliation and embarrassment, and wrote down a management strategy. I will talk about my emotions with others and remind myself that there's no reason to feel embarrassed. I'm not perfect and all people get tired. Then I recognized my self-defeating behavior, driving myself to keep working even though I know I need to rest. I wrote down a constructive behavior to practice instead. I would take a break and relax. I would ask someone to review the project and see if they could help me solve the problem.
After Jake identified a management strategy for each of his warning signs and associated thoughts and behaviors, he was ready to move on to the sixth step, which is recovery planning. Jake needed to build regular contact with an individual or group to help him deal with job-related stress. He decided to enter into therapy with a counselor who specialized in stress management, understood chemical dependency, and had a background as an employee assistance counselor. By doing this, Jake was forced to regularly discuss his work problems and review how he was coping with them.
The seventh step is inventory training. Every morning I would prepare myself to recognize any warning signs and remember what my strategy would be if I started to feel stressed. At night I would share anything significant that had gone on at work with my wife, and talk over how I had managed any issues to make sure I wasn't letting them build up. Family involvement is the eighth step of relapse prevention planning, and my wife started to attend Al-Anon so she could get support as well.
The final step is follow-up. Jake's warning signs will change as he progresses through recovery. Each stage of recovery has unique warning signs. Jake's ability to deal with the warning signs of one stage doesn't guarantee that he will recognize or know how to manage the warning signs of the next stage. His relapse prevention plan needs to be updated regularly, monthly for the first 3 months, quarterly for the first 2 years, and annually thereafter. Thank you for sharing your plan with us, Jake.
You're welcome. I hope my recovery can help others find hope and success as well.